Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kyle Suggs and this is Informal, where I basically write down a few notes and topics of things to talk about and basically do a little bit of a rant. And if you look at my About section on my YouTube channel, you'll see that I have a total openness to talk about mostly anything regarding the culture, where it stands. Now, we're not a political channel, we're not going to endorse any candidates, but from time to time I will talk about some things that have a political nature to it. And unfortunately, when we deal with Captain Marvel, it just proves proof positive that we cannot have entertainment without talking about politics at some level. Because mind you, that with this whole thing with Brie Larson, Rotten Tomatoes, all this stuff, the social justice warriors, the virtue signaling, the identity politics, all of that had a political motive behind it. And so for me to come out and say, this is what it is, and talk about what the problems with that, to not mention some sort of politics in that, in terms of implications, would be a huge mistake. And it just puts us at a disadvantage for the sake of being pleasant and not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. I won't do any of that, but I will drop a few truth bombs. I'm going to leave it out there. You guys can talk about it all you want, and we'll go from there. So with that being said, we're going to keep this topics pretty light today, but with that one caveat. Okay, so I hope you guys had a good weekend. I know the box office for Captain Marvel had a good weekend. I think it grossed anywhere $153 million worldwide. And that's a fantastic opening. And I know a lot of people are upset by that. But the fact of the matter is, that's what this is about. It's about giving people the freedom to choose what they want to do. But the ironic thing about this is, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, is that it was mostly men that ended up supporting this film. I mean, men are the ones who go to comic book movies to begin with, for the most part. You know, very few comic book movies are a 4-quadrant type of deal. And I think Marvel was trying their best to make it a 4-quadrant deal. But unfortunately, they ended up alienating a lot of their male base. So even though it made $153 million or somewhere around there, let's take a look at what it made. Okay, so it was $153 million. Okay, so the thing is that 153 could have been higher. And if you look at this article here from Deadline, it says here that even though Captain Marvel launched on International Women's Day yesterday, she continues to remain heavy male at 61%. Here's the article. So it just says here that females over 25 remain the third best draw at 22% behind male 25 and over at 33%, and men under 25 are 25%, and at 4 stars in A cinematic score, and 86 from females and 80% from males. Everyone is just charmed by Captain Marvel. Okay, so here's the thing. With Captain Marvel being the way it is and being as divisive as it is, my thoughts, and many people have said this too online, that the reason why so many people have shied away from this movie has everything to do with its divisive nature. So with the social justice warriors and the virtual signalers and the woke crowd, where were they to come out and support this movie? You know, it's pretty typical where you see these people just pick a cause. They don't care what it is, whether it be Ghostbusters, whether it be the president signing a Bible, who they're mad about doing that, or Captain Marvel. They don't read the Bible, they don't go to comic book movies, and so forth. But they will jump on and hijack something that they have nothing to do with. They had no part in this comic book universe. They just find something that looks exciting, jump on it, and then if it does well, they ram it down your throat. If it doesn't do well, they disappear into the darkness and wait for something else to come up. That's all they do. And everybody falls for it. And unfortunately, the producers and the Hollywood elites and the producer and the movie makers themselves are looking at these types of things. And because they're more driven by money and by their own narratives that they want to push, that they will go along with this and they're going to go ahead and try and push more movies in this direction. But eventually that will backfire for them, because Captain Marvel essentially was sitting in the middle, like I said before in the last video I talked about, in the middle of two massive films. And of course it was going to do well. You know, the comic book movies within the Marvel Universe have always done very well. And so that's that. So we have to keep an eye on this and see how it goes, but it's going to be interesting to see. It's also interesting to see how they ignore movies such as Wonder Woman, the original Supergirl that came out, the Terminator series, the Alien series with Sigourney Weaver, the whole Hunger Games, which is a huge successful box office run, and the Tomb Raider series, and there's many more that I can talk about that have been led and driven by female characters. And they want to act like these people never exist, these roles never existed until today. But the reason why they do that is because they need to be special. They need to be important enough for them to come out and say, hey, see, this is why we need to push these movies, because we haven't had this opportunity before. They're just making a case so they can spew their poison into our society. And I'm going to give you an example here. I have a quote here by Pat Sajak. Right here. Let me see if I can show you this. He says, I remember a time when you could enjoy or not enjoy a movie based on its merits. Now we have to worry about the politics of casting, the social implications of the film, and even the validity of the reviewing process. The joy is being sucked out of pretty much everything. Pat Sajak nailed this. He nailed this because everything we're talking about here, not just movies, it's going to sports, television, music, everything has to be filtered through a social justice or identity politics lens. And so what this channel is all about is reversing that. It's basically taking all of this stuff that you see and filtering it through a no-spin lens of reason and logic and common sense. That's what this channel is all about, and that's what we're going to strive for. And so we're going to talk about everything under the sun. But best believe that it's going to come through that filter and come out in a truthful, honest way, and we can debate over the merits of something versus the identity politics of something. Because ultimately, I don't care. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm just trying to present something in a way that's going to be beneficial to everybody so we can bring back the love and the joy. Because I like Star Wars. I like Star Trek. Both are being ruined right now. I haven't talked about that yet, but we will touch on that a little bit. I like James Bond. I'm sure that's going to be screwed up soon. Everything I pretty much like, I know it's going to be pushed on me in a way that's not good. I'm wearing a Washington Redskins t-shirt or jersey here. And so we can talk about that too all day long as well. The NFL is being infected. And so that's one of the things that, unless we stand up for what we believe in and the things that we care about and enjoy, these mediums are not going to be as successful and enjoyable. I mean, so I'm kind of jumping all around here, but I'm going to go back to my original point here where I have the fact that we just have to be diligent going forward to point out the things that we see, speak up, and then people will follow because the truth is very powerful. As long as we can get that message out, I think that would be all we have to do. So I'm going to jump to something a little bit more political. This is what I talked about earlier today. And that is, we hear the narrative all the time. And I saw this chart was pretty cool. We hear the narrative all the time about the income gap, okay, or the inequality in income gap, that the people who are at the lower end, the 10%, and between the 10% of the upper end of earnings is larger here in America than other parts of the world. And I saw this chart here. I'm bringing it right here. This is from the Better Life Index, and it's sourced. I'll have a link in the bottom here in the show notes of the actual spreadsheet, and you can look for yourself. This is from 2013, but the link at the bottom is from 2017, so you can see more updated data. But this chart here lays it out in a way that's really, really fascinating. So, and this is what I like to call a truth bomb. All right, this is what I want to throw out there so that people can talk about and see. Because once you see this, you realize quickly that this is not something that you've been taught about or talked about to in the media. You hear all the time how we have this income inequality. Well, let's take a look at this. Okay, so the United States up here at the top here has the #1 most income inequality. Okay, so and at the bottom here, toward the bottom, we see Mexico, which is, let me get this out of the way, so you can see that. All right, sorry about that. All right, I'll just leave it there. So Mexico at the bottom, it's underlined. If you look at their percentage rate for the bottom 10%, it's right at about 0.34 or 3.5, somewhere it's about 3.2%. All right, and then their top 10 is right over 0.4%. Okay, but if you look up to America, we're not even anywhere near that in terms of ours. So if you come down to the bottom where the America's 10% is right at 6.65, if you draw a straight line, imaginary line, straight from that point all the way down to the bottom, you'll see that the bottom 10% is doing better than Italy, Israel, Russia, Portugal, Brazil, Turkey, and Mexico, and yeah. And so, but then that's just our lower 10%. Let's just take the median or the average. If you grab the middle right around 0.75, you draw a line down there. Now all of a sudden the average American is doing better than the very best of Poland, Japan, France, Italy, Israel, and all the way down to the rest. So yes, the income cap is bigger. It's the biggest. However, because our top 10% is so far out in front of everybody else, it makes that get wider, yes, but yet it ends up bringing our 10% that much further up because there's so much wealth in this country. And so this is just perspective, and they'll end up using one form of statistics to actually prove one thing, or allegedly prove one thing, but in actuality they're only giving you part of the picture and keeping us ignorant along the way. So that's a discussion point. That's kind of out of there, but I just want to put that out there because, I know people are going to say, one thing, but this is what it is, and I find it very fascinating. So you can check this out. It's from theeconomist.com, and it's also referenced I also have a link to the actual website for the Better Life Index as well. Okay, so all right, so I'm going to wrap this thing up pretty quickly here. I'm not going to do a long show tonight. So as far as Game of Thrones is concerned, I haven't talked at all about that, but I am a huge Game of Thrones person. I like it. It's awesome. And I binge watched it up to the first 4 seasons, I believe. I didn't get a chance to really get into it because I didn't understand what was going on. I wasn't really feeling it at first because there were too many characters. It was too many places to deal with, and it was the first pilot put you in a position where you were in the middle of this crisis which has been going on for thousands of years. And I'm like, dude, this is crazy. I tried to start it up 3 times. I wasn't able to do it. And so finally I said, you know what? I went online and found a video of a summary of all of the different houses, Targaryen, Stark, and all of that. And I learned all that. And then once I had that kind of context in place, I realized, wow, this could actually be fun, and started watching it, understanding where things were coming from, and just start loving it. So I'm gonna start doing some Game of Thrones stuff. The season starts up, and let's pull this up real quick. I'll make sure I say it right. I believe it's in April. Yes, it's April. April 14th. Okay. And so I saw a video from Kit Harington, who plays Jon Snow. He was on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and they asked him what's going on, what his thoughts are. I won't play the clip, but I will leave a link in the bottom. He basically said that, yeah, the filming is over, but when he found out what the ending was going to be like, he basically cried his eyes out, which makes me think, well, what does that mean? Does it mean that he is so torn up that he just couldn't deal with, the friendships that he lost and the whole thought of not being part of this character anymore? Or was the ending that, gut-wrenching that he just couldn't deal with it? So that should be interesting to find out. I haven't watched the trailer for the new season at all. I don't want to know what's going on with that. But I am hearing that the first 2 episodes are going to be under 50 minutes. 6 episodes altogether. And they were clamoring that there's going to be pretty much a 60-plus minute episode for every single one this particular season. Apparently, that's not the case. The first 2 are under 50 minutes. However, there's supposed to be a couple of them that are 90 minutes. And it's just an entire battle for an entire 90 minutes. And that's what we're told. And that the cast has said that this battle is so insane, that it's layer within layer within layer, that the people are just going to be totally just, it's going to be insane. So they're saying entire 90-minute battle, and that's going to be nuts. So that should make up for everything else, I'm hoping. So we'll see. But as things go forward, I'm going to bring up some guests in. We're going to do probably do some pre-shows maybe. I'm still not quite back up to speed with all of the plot stuff, so I'm kind of just getting back into it. But of course, we'll be filtering it into what's going on with that. There's a lot of cool things with Game of Thrones that actually cuts against the culture now today, the narrative. Which I don't think if Game of Thrones started today, it could be the same thing. I think Game of Thrones started at the right time, because if it had started last year, it would have been so watered down. It would have been ridiculous. It would have been, I didn't want to talk about it. It would have been horrible, because I think Game of Thrones is a perfect example of what you can do with a show when you just give it the writing and let the guy and the gals who are producing it and their vision of it, let them do it and let it take care of itself and let it, be what it is outside of the realm of Hollywood influence and political influence based on what people feel people should be doing based on their race and their ethnicity and their sexual orientation. So, just my thoughts there. Speaking of which, the last thing I want to talk about is Star Trek Discovery. Star Trek Discovery is a show. I'm not going to get too much into it, but it's a show that I've been kind of holding off talking about because this Captain Marvel thing. This Captain Marvel thing has taken over everything. It's been sucking up the oxygen in the room for so long. But there's other things to talk about that have that same type of implications, because just as Captain Marvel has the possibility of taking the Marvel universe in a way that's totally politically driven, Star Trek Discovery has already done that with Star Trek, and part of that was because of the licensing issues between Paramount and I'm drawing a blank there. There's a licensing difference between Paramount and the licensing owners of Star Trek, and they ended up splitting and keeping a continuity between the original Star Trek of the original series from the 1960s all the way up to the Star Trek movies leading up into the Kelvin universe, and that's it. And then from the Kelvin universe going forward, that became a whole new prime timeline, but not a prime canon timeline. It's really confusing, but the gist of it is the Bad Robot production company with J.J. Abrams took over that particular licensing, but because they could not use it as is because of the licensing issues going on, they had to make a 25%, that's what's rumored, 25% different of what was before for the original canon Star Trek. And so you had to have, that's why the uniforms are different by a little bit. That's why the ships are a little bit bigger. That's why the Klingons look differently. And so then within that whole Kelvin universe, you have a prime, which is I don't want to get into it. It's just too much. Anyway, but the point of the matter is that you're having a lot of narratives in there with a particular captain Michael Burnham, who is the Sasha from Walking Dead. She is now the character there, and she's changing things in a way that is totally against what Roddenberry had envisioned, I believe, and also the notion of what Star Trek is as a show, because she is now the focal point of all the episodes, whereas other people are just side characters, around in her little world. Now she's also becoming what they consider a Mary Sue, and that's another discussion. And so I stopped watching Star Trek Discovery after the first half of the first season. I got the first the free trial that we did for CBS Online Access, and I started watching the first 3 or 4 episodes. It became so repugnant that I just stopped. But then the Orville, which is another show that McFarlane did, I am now watching that, but I did not watch anything in the second season because I want to binge watch the entire second season. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'm going to be doing some Orville shows as well and talking about that. So that's what I have so far coming up. And as we approach 1,000 subscribers, we're actually really there now, but that can fluctuate. So I'm going to continue on forward. And as we get safely in that 1,000 subscriber territory, I'm going to do something official and say something. But I wanted to let you guys know that I do appreciate the comments, the emails that you give me, the suggestion. And to the one person who commented about the color correction, I did fix that. Figured out how to do that. And so trying to better this program and this blog and this channel as best as possible, and trying to put out as much content as possible, and also making it such a way that it's enjoyable but also truthful, honest, and can relate to the average person who is tired of seeing their medium, their politics, their sports, their television, whatever, being flushed down the toilet by people who don't care about it, who are off to other things after they destroy it. And so it's almost like the Borg. It's almost like I should do a narrative like that. These social justice warriors are like the Borg. They come in, they assimilate, and they move on, and they don't really care about what they're assimilating, just as long as it assimilates. That's a pretty good example. That's gonna be a video to come. Okay, cool. All right, cool. That's it for I have for today. Again, today was a Monday, March 11th, and this was informal. And until next time, you guys continue to be awesome. If you like the content, again, just please put a like in the comments below and subscribe and tell your friends about us. And I'd be happy to have you on board, and happy to reply to any of your comments that you have as well. So that's it. So take care and bye-bye.